and we trounced them 5-0, and I scored a couple, and it was a fairy tale ever since. And really, Chelsea fans who you speak to are from the 80s, and who went to these games. They went to Brighton just after that. We won 2-1. I mean, they invaded the pitch, broke the crossbar, but it was out of exuberance. It wasn't out of. They couldn't believe we'd won 5-0 and we beat Brighton 2-1 away. They went down there for the weekend, and it was a bit of a fairy tale. I scored both goals at Brighton as well. I was on a bit of a roll, and really you could see it in the fans, and that's one of the reasons that perhaps to this very day that fans take you to their heart, because you shared your experiences with them.
Yeah. Do you think that's missing in the game today, Kerry?
Yeah. I look at Chelsea, I think it is missing. I think the modern players don't get close enough to the fans. Fans are made to wait in areas that are not right. And I think more players, on what I've seen, should spend more time with fans. That's not to say to certain players, people like Joe Cole, John Terry, Frank Lampard and co, they're absolutely fantastic in terms of spending time with supporters and having time with supporters. And, that's why them people will go down as the term we spoke about, legends in Chelsea fans' hearts, because they spend time and they've got a bit of something about them that says, hold on, I'm a bit privileged here. These people have waited for my autograph and such, and instead of having a mobile phone to their ear and so on, they actually take time, sign autographs and spend a bit of time with the fans. And, they're actually good examples to me of modern day players, but I do sadly think that a lot of it is missing these days.
Yeah. When we talk about the modern game, obviously the profile of football's gone through the roof now with obviously the TV and the newspaper coverages now. How do you think you would have coped in today's game in terms of having paparazzi parked outside your house, 24/7, open for an exclusive and going through your bin looking for wage slips and stuff? How would you have coped with that side of it?
Well, to be honest, it happened to a degree. The newspapers were still as scathing in their times of players and their ways as they are today. It's just that the exposure seems to be a lot more because television captures a lot more, and it's really a case of players' lives are in a spotlight. Okay, people say, well, they get paid accordingly and fair dues, but it's not easy. Every move you make, being a young man, I remember Paul Gascoigne, who was probably the biggest star when we were growing up, used to have 4 newspapermen camped at the end of his drive all the time. And one time they asked him, he got so annoyed with him, apparently he got so annoyed, one of them asked him for a football. He says, yeah, give us it and sign, and he took it off and booted it in the river, and he said, now clear off. They want to write stories about him, but they still want his signature. It's the hypocrisy of it all.
You spoke briefly earlier on about Pat Nevin. How good was Pat Nevin for a striker like you, Kerry, who was so clinical in front of goal with his sort of supply in his
Pat Nevin was an amazing player. People said he reminded them, the Chelsea people said he reminded them of Charlie Cook previously, but he was a dribbler, a wing wizard. I found it hard at first to get to know Pat and how he would play, but the understanding developed. The same could be said of David Speedy. Found it hard to get an understanding when Pat would cross the ball, because he'd continually beat players, and every Chelsea fan of them days would remember a game against Newcastle when he beat about 5 Newcastle players. And he actually beat the same one twice. He beat him once and I thought he was going to cross it. He went back, beat him again and then crossed the ball. And Chelsea fans were cheering. It was amazing.
You also spoke about David Speedy, and a lot's been written and said about your relationship in the past, and it's been rumoured that you didn't particularly get on well off the pitch. Is that true?
No. Didn't at first. David was big friends with Colin Lee, and there was 3 of us pretty much vying for a position up front. I started the first 6 games of the season with Colin Lee up front, and David didn't get in the side, and he obviously thought he should be in the side. He was there 6 months before. He got in, and the partnership was good, but he then used to feel that Colin should be in the side. But it culminated. I think Manchester City at home, we had a row. He didn't pass to me in a situation. I told him, he swore at me, I swore back. See you in the dressing room. It continued on the way up the tunnel, and in the dressing room we exchanged blows. John Neal, it got stopped. It wasn't, and John Neal called us in the office, and he told us that he felt we were both great strikers. We could do good things for the club, and we're both going to be in his side, and we're his first choice too. So whatever it is, this is what's going to happen, and that stayed the case. Colin Lee took over as a right back towards the end of the season, and he played the second half of that season as a right back, taking the place of coach John Hollins. So everyone was happy in the end.
When it did click for you and Speedy, it really clicked, and you two seemed to have a really good partnership up front. You could read each other's game really well. What do you think the secret was behind that?
He did the things that I didn't do so well very well, and vice versa, and it becomes so compatible. When you talk about playing, and I look at modern day players and they talk about rotation systems, I think back to my days, and it's not the olden days, because football hasn't changed too much. Everyone says, "Oh, it's changed." It hasn't. It's still a case of if you've got a strike partner or you've got a central defensive partner, you've got to know when they're going to attack the ball, or they're going to go near, or you're going to go far, or where they're going to run, when they're going to run, when they're going to play a ball, and so on. It seemed to be telepathic with David. I got to know his game so well, what he was going to do, and it always gave you that extra half a yard or a yard ahead of defenders who didn't have the same, if you want, telepathy. It didn't have the same reading or knowledge of each other's game. It's just something that come natural.
Who was the best player you ever played with?
David Speedy. You just hit it. I've played with some great players, and people ask me, but you have to ask about the best strike player I ever played with, because when you say you play with the great Brian Robson, the great Glenn Hoddle, the great Peter Shilton, and the great John Barnes, people might not say so, but you ask Liverpool fans, Gary Lineker, the great Gary Lineker, 48 goals for England. I played with all these players. David Speedy was the most compatible player for me, in my time since I played football. But all these other players were great as well, and it has to be taken. As it said, you can't compare a great goalkeeper like Peter Shilton with, say, David Speedy, a great striker. Different positions.
You talk about the compatibility between you and Speedy being the key, as for him being the best player you ever played with. I mean, a lot of people say you never got the fair crack of a whip in terms of building up an understanding with the likes of Lineker and stuff. And if you would have done, then there's a fair chance you would have built up that understanding like you did with Speedy. It
was a dream come true for me when I was picked for the England squad in the first place, and then to actually play. I came on as sub against Mexico in the pre-World Cup tour '85 after finishing top scorer in the first division, joint with Gary Lineker. And it was an absolute pleasure to win my first full cap on that same tour, the game after, against West Germany in the Aztec Stadium in Mexico, where I scored 2, we won 3-1. It was a dream debut, and I said earlier about great moments scoring at Arsenal and scoring a goal, but if you ask what was your highlight, scoring on your full debut for England would have to be it's an incredible high for a boy, if you like, that was turned down twice and told by good respected managers that you weren't going to make the grade. It was incredible.
How aware of you in the build up to your first England call up were you that England were coming to the games and watching you?
Well, there was speculation all the time. It was constantly in the papers about, is he good enough? Isn't he good enough? No, he's not. You've got so-called players, ex-players go and say he's not good enough, he's better. And, it's all about opinions, it still is. In my day, when I say I was lucky enough to play for England, there's about 15 strikers during the period I could have played when I was at the top level, if you like, who played for England. You look at the Woodcocks, the Mariners, the Walshes, the Steens, the Harfords, the Linekers, the Cotties, the Wrights, the Brights. You look at the Steve Bulls, the Fashnews, all people who played for England. Peter Beardsley, there was loads of players that played for England. Gary Birtles, Trevor Francis. All of these players were playing in and around, the various teams when I was playing. And I look today, and people get England caps, and I think to myself, they should be a little bit, or show, or seem to be a little bit more proud to wear. When players are pulling out of internationals for injuries, their clubs are pulling them out and they play on a Saturday, it galls me. There's no pride in playing for England. And it should be. It's not club versus country. You should be proud to play for your country. And too many players don't show that. And the support that goes with England is absolutely fantastic. I absolutely loved it, and I really do think that players should show a little bit more for their country.
Can you remember where you were and how you first heard about your first England call-up?
I was at training, and I got told by John Hollins, called me in the office afterwards, said they'd announced the England squad and you're in it. Congratulations. I said thanks. I didn't go overboard about them sort of things. I wasn't that sort of guy, but inwardly I felt absolutely brilliant.
Yeah.
But all it was another hurdle that I'd crossed. I'd made the England squad. Now I had to go and train with them and get myself in the team. And when I got myself in the team, I had to go and play and prove that I could do it at that level as well. It was the next hurdle.
Yeah.
A door was opening, if you like.
When you talk about Kerry Dixon in an England shirt, most people remember the game against West Germany that you touched on earlier. And of course you laid on the third goal for Brian Robson, I think it was as well.
That's right.
What do you remember about that game?
I was nervous. Hair stood up on the back of my neck and all over my body was a tingle when I heard the national anthem. I was standing there and I thought, Kerry Dixon, Chelsea and England. It was an incredible thought. What I remember about the game, it was hot, but we'd trained. It was all about acclimatisation for the World Cup in '86, and it was decent. Glenn Hoddle played the ball in. I saw the run of Brian Robson. I chested it down for him into his part. He hit it first time, 1-0 up, and they equalised. And then I think they equalised. And then then I scored a couple. Terry Butcher broke from the halfway line. Well, I was always quite quick.
Yeah.
Well, I got up with him alongside him and screaming for him I stayed on side just behind him, screaming for him to pass. Butch tried to go around the keeper, and the keeper actually got a touch into my path. The ball stuck under my feet a little bit. Yeah. Well, I managed to dig it out, and I agonisingly watched it because it was rolling towards the post, and it was an open goal. But luckily for me, it just hit the inside of the post and went in.
Yeah.
And it was an absolute amazing feeling.
What do you remember about the pass for Robbo's goal?
Just chest. It came. Glenn Hoddle's ball was perfect, as it always was. Brian Robson's finish and great run into the box. You look at modern day players, Lampard and Robson, very similar. And his run was good, and his finish, I just had to make sure I did my part. The chest down, it was good. It was a good goal. The best goal, of course, for me was the header when the ball came across Barnes', the third one, the header, rose above two German defenders and headed it in, and it was an amazing feeling.
Yeah, you spoke about before the England game being nervous. Was you a particularly nervous player, Kerry? Like for club games, did you get nervous before? Mate?
I think it helps to have a bit of nerves. I think if you don't go into a game with a bit of tension and a bit of you hope to do well. The big games you want to play in them, and if you go in there all casual and relaxed. I'm generally a casual, relaxed person and at ease with things, and I'm confident in certain things. I'll score. I know if I get enough chances, and if I miss the first one or miss the second one, then I'll be trying that little bit more to make sure I got the third one.
Yeah.
And I'm confident in my own ability, or I was, and I always have been that type of person. But there was always that little bit of nerves, in the unknown that you didn't know, because you never know what sort of game you're going to have.
Yeah.
Players can go out there with the best will in the world and prepare right, but you might not have a good game.
Yeah.
And there's other times you don't do things right, and you go out, and all of a sudden things start falling for you. And people say you've had a great game, and you think, how did I get away with that?
How did you used to psych yourself up for the games?
You just do it inwardly. You think. You know what's coming. When I used to play against Tony Adams, who was the best defender I ever played against, and things like that. I have to play well this weekend and make sure I don't drink too much. Just all these sort of things, and didn't always work, as I say. Yeah. But nevertheless, you just know it just builds up as the game gets nearer.
Yeah. Was you a superstitious player in terms of you'd always wear the same pants or the same suit?
I was probably one of the worst superstitious players you ever meet in your life. If I'd scored the game before, I used to walk out fourth. I used to hold a ball. I just did my kit up at the same time. The preparation was the same. I kept the same tie-ups for about 3 years. They were so rotten, but I still kept them because they'd served me good, and I was scoring goals in them. The shin pads I wore for about 8 years. Didn't want to change. Wouldn't ever change my boots. I always wanted to keep the same type. I had every superstition going.
Yeah.
Even when I had a bad run, I decided to have a haircut or things like that. Or just do something different, go out last. But